Welcome back. Trying to finish Roottreemania, which is the continuation from the original The Roottrees is Dead. We locked in 8 family members, including the new family addition, which is Stephanie Jones's baby. So maybe I'll pull up the calendar, we'll go over it together. So we know that there were 3 possible affairs. So we know Elias Root slept with someone. Miracle Root slept with a singer named Mary Beth Quaker, who was also Mary Beth Clementine. And then we know the Guy Hudson had multiple affairs, but we're not sure who those are. Then Stephanie Landon married Brian Jones and had Carol Jones. That's a new family tree addition. So we had left off with quite a bit of evidence that we did not have the first time around. So let's see what we have obtained. So we got some records from a person, like a company file that we haven't looked into yet. There's also a ton of reminders that have records in them. So the numbers still match what we should be searching for. I think we've searched for all this. I think we've done quite a bit here. We still can't find November. So, we're trying to work through the new evidence. So these are partial staff records given by Sam Madsen. These include old tax mailing info and only the details for employees that work directly for the Roottrees or in the corporate office. Many of the laborers from the farms and the factories are not listed. Not sure how helpful this will be, except helping cross-reference Guy's secretary's other visits overseas. Spider searching people just because they're listening to these books will be time consuming and a waste of time. So we have quite a few people in this section. So for leadership, we have President Zach Morton, and then special management was Ernest Madsen Jr. But we knew that at the time in 75. Who worked in the office: Edward Roottree, Lloyd Carpenter, Carl Monroe, and Elizabeth Cravensworth. Now, we had heard about that name, Elizabeth. She was the mother to someone who ended up getting married later to a guy who worked at the Italian restaurant. She may be worth looking into, only because her name's Elizabeth. So, in product management, we had Eli C. Root, Fred Cross, Albert Cross, and Douglas Rosenberg. For secretaries at that time, we had Juliet McCullen, Joanna Robertson, so that's her last name. Her last name was Robertson. Doris Mays, and Beth Knox. So we have another Beth. Those might be worth looking up at the secretaries. In the farming and manufacturing, we have Samantha Madsen, John Miller, Elizabeth Perro, which is a different Elizabeth than this one from office staff. Thomas Green, Fred Gleason, Stuart Thomas, Sam Harmon, Robert Logan, Michael Crane, and Jack Keating. No major expenses. So one of these names is important. So I think we're going to start with one of the secretaries' names, because we got a lot of information from this. So first, let me put Joanna Robertson. That was her name before she got married. Well, that locks something for us. Cool. So, okay, we locked in Lisa Clementine, Cam Lincoln, Mary Clementine, and Joanna Robertson. Okay. Those are people we had put in previously. We're about to get new evidence, I guess.
Sam reached out to me finally. I think I have you to thank for that one.
Yeah, because we've been talking to Sam on the low. You just didn't know.
My family's in a bit of a rough patch. Even though the candy is selling better than ever, everyone is fighting over the trust.
Okay.
The majority of us want to dissolve it. On paper, it seems like the right decision.
I don't see how it seems like the right decision. You need the trust to get paid. It'll be messier if you don't have the trust.
The arguments about what to do next are endless and heated. More than a few Roottrees are worried about losing their wealth.
Right.
I don't think we deserve it more than anyone else.
Okay.
I love my family, my wife, my daughters, even my son, who I hardly ever get to see.
When did he have a son?
I want to keep them safe and secure. I didn't do anything to deserve this fortune.
That's true.
Hell, I probably deserve it less than most. It took me way too long to get my life together. Okay, enough about me. Here's the deal. I can't stop the majority from voting one way or another.
Right.
If you keep passing along potential Roottrees, I'll keep adding them to the list. On the other hand, there's been some leaps forward in genetics.
Yeah, you can just get DNA tests at this point.
It may sound like science fiction, but we can actually determine who's in the family just by testing it.
Right. You don't need me.
What you've done so far has been very useful. Just keep filling out the tree and we'll prepare for the test.
You don't have any new evidence for me? No, he came with nothing. That was useless. We're still missing 8 folks. So, the rest of the affair people were missing. And his name must be wrong. His name was Riley. Because the son's name was David. Okay, so I fixed that so we can lock it in, I guess, the next time. This all locked in. So we're good here and that locked in, so we're good there. Okay, so on this tree, we know there's another secretary. There's somebody, either an Elizabeth or a Beth, who he slept with, who was also a secretary, but not at the same time Joanna was a secretary, and we learned that from, where is it? So much evidence. Right, so we know there's an Elizabeth, there's a farm supervisor named Elizabeth, but there's another Elizabeth. She was a caterer at a local restaurant called Antonelli's. She met her daughter at one of the guys' parties, and they eloped. So there's something here. One of these Elizabeths that we got the names from the records was also a secretary for Guy and may have had a kid with him. So we need to search that. So going back to Antonelli's, because I forget the name we got from that. There's so many names that it's like hard to keep track of who's who. Antonelli's. So the owner was Rochelle Zimmer. She didn't come up. Because I don't think we searched her last time. We searched Christine Garland, but she didn't come up with anything. So Rochelle and her husband Mark were mentioned a few times. They're both local business owners. So Rochelle owned something. She owned the Antonelli's. But her husband also owns something. And she's married to Mark Zimmer. So I'm going to have to look him up next. Be like, hey, Mark, hey, how's it going? Oh, Mark owned a bookstore. Called Bookmarks. Okay. So there were 2 local business owners, but both of their businesses closed in 92. Mark was also mentioned once in the Butler Times where he sued Steve Garland. So let's try Steve Garland. Steve Garland is mentioned a couple times in an article. Okay. The second time was from months later in 1978. There's a blurb for his weekend cooking classes, Gourmet for the Groovy. The blurb mentioned he'd been giving lessons from his home kitchen for the last month so he can keep an eye on his son. The third was from 91. It said local author sued by former Butler County resident. It seems the local author by the name of Mark Zimmer was sued by Garland after Garland saw Zimmer promoting his book on television. His recipe book was partially plagiarized from the recipes that Steve Garland would give his students during his cooking lessons before he moved. The article mentions that although recipes are hard to copyright, Garland accompanied each recipe with a short fiction about how he learned it. This was usually doubled as a way to remember certain ingredients. Garland's bean salad, for example, involved making a trade with the gnome for some magic beans. Apparently, these stories were found word for word in Zimmer's cookbook, in addition to additional stories that follow the same format. Okay. Let's see Kitchen Tales by Mark Zimmer. because that's a book, so we can search it in the library. So the book was printed in 1982, but it's now out of print. Re-released as Garnishing the Truth. Okay, well, let's try that one then. Was it made by Mark Zimmer? No. Okay, let's try searching it here. So, Kitchen Tales. Okay, Kitchen Tales is a story-based recipe book credited to Mark Zimmer that had some success after it was featured on a morning talk show. The book released before the internet was widespread, so mentions are rare. One book collector states the publishers were so unprepared for the demand and there was no second printing, so it's unusual to find a copy in the wild. You can find an alternative medicine website which focuses on cooking with natural ingredients. It mentioned that one of Kitchen Tales' recipes includes salt water. She said if you switch out the salt water in the recipe for a mix of 2/3 spring water and 1/3 filtered seawater, it tastes great. Okay. That's a whole thing. So Kitchen Tales is a book that combines recipes and stories. It was mildly popular, but seemed to disappear from marketplaces online in 1992. You found a scan of one story on the website. It demonstrates how to cook the plated loaf. For years, two bakers, Flora and Yates, flirted. They grew their friendship, compared recipes, and combined knowledge. She loved his salt and pepper beard. He adored her rosemary cheeks. They thought sweetly about one another, but he was whisked away, conscripted to bake the army's bread. By the oil of a lamp, Flora's tears began to add to salt her bread. It was 10 to 12 years later when they met again. Flora's unique dough had earned her a position in the king's personal bakery. Yates had found success as well. He baked for the kingdom's 45 diplomats. One day, they returned from the Dutch Isles with a gift, 450 unbaked loaves, and were sent to the palace bakery to teach a method that required no kneading. Upon seeing Yates, Flora was both delighted and distraught. She felt that she was torn in two. She had not been made aware of the gift and already had prepared buns for the palace's ovens. She wished to greet Yates warmly, but was struck by fears that he'd be unable to bake with her, that she'd face restitution for being unprepared. She cried to Yates, adding more salt to the dough. Yates eased her pain. He insisted she had no obligation to prepare for a turn she thought was impossible, but he shared her fear of retribution. He knew if they did not dissolve her predicament, they missed their final chance to bake together. In the end, instead of wallowing in the present, they worked together to shape the future. They twisted and twined their doughs and baked them at once. Thus was born the plated loaf. Word quickly spread of this new delight. The king's decree on royal parchment was that it be considered a delicacy. Bankrolled by the king, Flora and Yates spent their days baking together. They traveled for 45 years and then settled down for 15 more. Their souls were golden, no regret. That's a lot going on here. That's a lot going on here. I don't know how helpful this is going to be. So back to here. We couldn't find Garnishing the Truth in the library, but that's because we don't have the right author's name. So why don't we search it in Spider Search? Garnishing the Truth is a cookbook credited to Garland and Zimmer. It was released in 1994. It was actually quite successful after the duo appeared to promote it in a daytime talk show. There's been multiple printings ever since. According to a book review, the recipes are accompanied by stories that help the readers remember the ingredients. Okay. So it's by Garland and Zimmer. So that's why I couldn't find it when I searched it under Zimmer. Now we're going to search it under Garland and Zimmer. There we go. Published in 1994. The introduction of this book is a series of acknowledgments from Steve. First, Christine, thank you for everything. Your support means the world to me. You're the apple of my pie. The second is to James and Robert. You're becoming amazing men and incredible chefs. I guess I'm a good teacher. The final is to Mark Zimmer. You proved my storytelling approach to recipes could be popular. Without you, this book wouldn't exist. I guess that's fair. There's also a foreword by Mark Zimmer. I first met Steve in 1978 when he taught a cooking class. The next time I saw him was over a decade later when he was suing me for stealing his recipes. Yeah, really. So you're wondering what I'm doing in this introduction. Well, it turns out that Steve and I have much more in common than we thought. Instead of settling in court, we settled it at the McCarran's brew house over a game of darts. By the end of the game, he and I both agreed we'd rather spend a ton of money to make a ton of money together than spend a lot of money on lawyers. Pretty rare to meet your best friend so late in life, but I decided to retire and move to Boston so we can hang out more. So if you're browsing this book in the bookstore, please buy our book. We need more money for when the free beer runs out, and the bookstore could probably use a sale. Okay. That seems important. McCarran's brew house is... Oh, did we get new evidence? Wait, let me go back. We didn't get anything new, right? Okay. All right. McCarran's brew house is a pub in Boston. They have a website. Apparently the bar has been around a long time. On the site, there's a list of famous people who have had a drink there, including former presidents of the United States, now of the Roottrees Company and Kennedy. Also, there's a few listings of television shows and books that have mentioned McCarran's, as well as how they came up. One of them is Garnishing the Truth, which is a book that has to say about local and regular Stevie G. Did he change his name? I guess it's Steve Garland, so he didn't change his name. Wrote a book about food. We prefer cocktails. But he gave us a shout out, and we aren't going to say no to free press. So go grab a bite at his kids' joint, Friday, and then meet him for a drink. So one of his kids owns a restaurant, I guess. Okay, so Friday is a popular restaurant in Boston. They don't have a website, but a lot of locals seem to mention it in various places. One more in-depth review explains it's not a full restaurant, just the front door and a very small interior with a window. Unusually, the restaurant only serves vegetables, but lots of reviews say that in spite of that, it's delicious. You also find a short story about it on a website called My Boston Homepage. Whoever runs the page seems to just link random sites related to Boston, telling personal anecdotes related to Boston, and giving their relatively short opinions on things in Boston. It's so unorganized. It has this to say about Friday. Wickedly overrated. I saw it in Chef's Signature, so I went, and there was a huge line, and it didn't have a single meat dish. What was the point? Chef's Signature sounds like a magazine. Chef's Signature is a magazine related to food and trendy restaurants. They cover subjects all over the United States. We got a new periodical from that. So, does he have anything on Steve Garland? Does he have anything on Friday? There we go. Chef's Signature cover Friday less than a year ago, right around the time you start your initial investigation. Each article in the Chef's Signature tends to focus on a restaurant, and like the magazine's name implies, each restaurant lists one of the main dishes that the head chef is known for. Friday's signature is a samosa cone. The cover and the main article have been added to evidence. Okay, so these are the Garland boys. So we definitely want their pictures. Chef's Signature, a nationally published magazine targeted towards fans of unusual restaurants, features James and Robert Garland on the cover of their November 1998 issue. According to the article, the two brothers own a small walk-up window in Boston called Friday, a play on the tie-dye shirts the servers wear that exclusively sells vegetarian dishes. Most of the offerings are heavily inspired by the powerful spices found in Thai and Indian foods. Their signature dish is a samosa cone, which is a distant, somewhat resembles a traditional ice cream, complete with waffle pattern. Instead, it contains fried potatoes, pureed peas, carrots, and a special ginger-based sauce. Robert, who's 3 years younger than James, jokes that although the age difference has left him delegated to wear the shoe chef jacket his whole life, he doesn't mind. As a result, James answered most of the interviewer's questions. James credited his love for food and his culinary skills to their upbringing. Most kids hate vegetables growing up, but they didn't have parents like we did. My father was a chef, and my mother grew up on a farm that supplied his restaurant. That's how they met. I don't have any memories from the farm or anything like that, since we moved here before I could even talk. But they told me stories. My dad's a great storyteller. He even wrote a book that helped partially fund Friday. So Steve Garland? Maybe? We're going to put him over here. So we have Steve Garland. And then the two boys. So which one's older? Oh. James is the older one. So we're going to put James first. James Garland. He's a chef. And then the other boy, Robert. But we don't know who their mom is. It's like, okay. Garland. He's also a chef, right? See, so hard to tell. But we're going to put it like that and see if it locks it in. All right. When we moved, we were looking to open a restaurant together. Unfortunately, they never got it off the ground. His line cook gig ended up being less temporary than hoped, and she had to go back to work as a secretary before Robert was born. Before we were old enough to go to school, we spent our days with my aunt. In the diner where he worked, my dad had no room for experimenting, so he was always exercising his skills at home on his day off. We'd always go shopping and cooking as a family on those days, and even though we were hyper kids running around and causing a ruckus, those are some of our family's favorite memories since we were all together. Mom always had the best eye for the best vegetables for him to work with, and she did her best to pass that on to us. According to the article, their parents, who now retired, visit Friday often. They even have a signature dessert, the Sistine apple. Apple pie has always been my mom's favorite, and my dad always had the stupid line that he used to make her laugh involving apple pie. Most people realize it's a Sistine Chapel pun and assume that's all there is to it, but it's actually secretly named after them, sort of. That's a weird one. That's a really weird one. Sistine apple. Can we search that? Oh, nope. Doesn't come with anything. Okay. Well, that might be a dead end then, because we're missing something about that. Because it's like, who's the mom? Maybe it's time to search these people. So Elizabeth Cravensworth. Some of these people might be local people. No. Okay. What about Juliet McCullen? Joanna Robertson? We know she exists because she was... Doris May? Beth Knox. Okay, so none of these people from the list seem to exist. And they were on the list for secretaries, so I know they are real people, but they haven't popped up. But there's something about that Sistine apple. But we're missing something. Now, they said Sistine. There was a lady named Cicely Sanchez. That's only because he said it's a play on her name, sort of. So let's go back to her, Cicely Sanchez. Because that's the only thing that could be even close to that. So let's put her in here. Was she not in here? I think I'm spelling her name wrong. We know she's an author of a book. There's a bunch of conspiracies. That's important. Now, there was a conspiracy guy from the first half, Thomas Overwood. During your search, 8 months later, the page still exists and is thriving. Some of the older articles have been replaced. More than one of the theories involving Roottrees deaths being faked. Statistically, when you have this many high-profile people have died in the family, the odds are one of them is faking their death. It's not just math. This newfound focus on death faking seems to coincide with the post that he started believing that Guy is not dead theory. In his own words, my eyes have been opened. All of this is beginning to make too much sense. One of the posts details the belief that Ron Roottrees is still in charge, Gwyneth's death was faked, and Clark's only there to throw people off. Apparently, this allowed Ron to travel to France to develop their new candy recipe in secret. There's another one about the rapper 5Ps. He couldn't possibly be a Roottree. One of the first album songs, when he was performing under the Devil's name, actually mentioned he wanted to have sex with Raina. Not even Steve Madsen is spared. According to Overwood, the author of Six Pieces isn't real. Sam Madison is an anagram for Am Madness. They're purposely leaving hints for us. He claims by using 6 pieces with Lauren Roottree's book as a one-time pad, he began to decrypt a cipher. Most of the cipher seemed meaningless, but he managed to pick out the words people and vastness and is working on figuring out what the rest means. There's also a request at the bottom. Next year is a leap year, and Overwood is looking for funds and volunteers to catch the Roottrees red-handed in Operation RT-29. He specifically mentions not to volunteer if you ever drunk Spirit Cola, but doesn't go into the reasons why. Okay, we got a lot here, but not really. Guy's not dead. There we go. The Guy's Not Dead conspiracy stems from a website that focuses on clues that the Roottrees have supposedly hid all over the place. This includes candy wrappers, print advertisement, television commercials, jingles, etc. The story, according to the website, is that Guy Hudson was a terrible president of the Roottree Company and introduced multiple failed products. Something needed to be done to put the company immediately and instantly back in the favor of consumers, so they killed off Guy and replaced him with a new president. This move immediately garnered sympathy, and the company recovered the next year, more popular than ever. The next president stayed much further out of the limelight, and some people even theorized that he was simply Guy Hudson in an elaborate disguise, which is why he stopped appearing in public. The people who run the site are asking for help. They're certain that there are clues to all of this that accidentally leaked in a banned article from the magazine Perocchi. On their page is a scan of the magazine's cover, the interview with Cicely Sanchez about Guy Hudson, and some photos. Okay, so Cicely Pie, Apple, it sounds like she's the mom, but I don't know. This photo is the first from a magazine interview with Cicely in Picoti. The issue was pulled from the shelves as you managed to find it online. Picoti does not individually label their photos. Pictures are instead under a shared label. Cicely was provided these photos by the Roottree Company for her book. In the background of the photo, there's a Christmas tree. Well, that's definitely Guy. I guess that's Cicely, but I'm not sure who that is. And there's a girl in the background, but I'm not sure who she is. Okay, so that's one picture. Did we get any other? We did get another photo. So this is Picoti photo 2. This is from a magazine interview with Cicely. So we know he's someone. So Guy, this, and someone. We have to assume this is Zach. If we go back and look at the tree. Oop, not that closely. Zach was the only plus-size person in the family, so we have to assume that that's Zach again in this most recent picture. So when Zach retired and Guy became president, this was the handoff between the two of them, but I don't know who the girl would be. So now Guy became president when? So this is 75, and Guy is not president yet. So in 77, Guy Hudson replaced Ernest Madsen Jr. There was a retirement party held in November before spending the final month in transition. So Eli C. left the company. Ernest Madsen Jr. joined the company. Joanna Robinson is no longer secretary, but Joanna Fellows is added to it. So she got married. Christine Farrell was hired. But then a year later, she and Beth quit, and then Christine quit. No, Christine became Christine Garland that year. So a lot of people quitting. So, going back to the pictures, since she's holding the 2 glasses of champagne, she's probably a secretary. And we know she ends up marrying Steve Garland later. So this is probably Christine Garland in the picture. Don't know where that puts her in the tree, though. So if we're saying this is Christine Garland, she was a secretary. Now, I don't know if that's her most recent career, because you know they're funny about that. It has to be... Oh, no, she wasn't Garland at first. She was Perot at first, right? According to the records. Yeah, she was hired on as Christine Perot, but then she got married. So she had an affair with Guy Hudson. So are those not Steve's kids? I don't know, actually. But we're going to leave this tree alone, because I think that makes sense here, this corner. But he has other affairs still. And then the dad had an affair, which I don't even know about that. But there are people in this other picture. Where is the other picture now? Now we know that's Guy and Cicely, but there's someone in the background and there's this guy. So we're definitely missing something there. Did he have an affair with Cicely? And that's why she knew so much about him, was able to write a book about him. Because when they said the book had a cease and desist because she had pictures she wasn't supposed to have access to, how would she have pictures that she wasn't supposed to have access to? Unless she was sleeping with him, and that's how she had pictures she wasn't supposed to. Right? Because like there's something missing there. We're gonna go back. There's some more records. Guy took over the company. He repacked Zach. Edward and Elizabeth and Lloyd quit. Raffertoons is now listed as office staff. 2 other people quit. Christine Garland quit. 2 new people were hired. Juliet McCullen and them quit, but 2 new people were hired. Lisa Lewis. Is that Lisa Clementine? Did she become Clementine later? I don't know. And then we keep going. In the 80s, a lot of people quitting. Oh, they had some expenses. They delivered some new flavors. A lot of parties. They had a lot of balls. Did they do that in the 70s? Oh, they renovated the office, retirement party. Now here's a trip to Brazil. Now I know they talked about Brazil before, that Guy Hudson went and had potentially bribed someone for that, to be able to open a factory there. So let's try Roottrees, Brazil. Roottrees, Brazil, sometimes referred to as Roottrees Brazil, is one of the companies created to manufacture and distribute Roottrees candy. It was developed as a part of Roottrees Everywhere initiative that began in 1979. Unlike some of the other Roottrees Everywhere results, Roottrees Brazil seems to be successful. Brazil was the only region in which the caviar-flavored 5 pieces were a hit. Primary reason that the factory still exists to this day is solely to create that flavor, which comes in its own standalone 5-piece bag with Portuguese writing. A small town named Avalagos, near the municipality of São Bernardo do Campo, became the location chosen by the Roottrees president after a newly elected politician named Edson Soares heard they were planning a new factory and petitioned them in 1979. So he did bribe a local politician to get that factory going. The factory is controversial since locals did not want it there. The Roottrees visited Brazil around Christmas, managed to break ground on the project. However, there's been 2 incidences since operating: Incidido de Gordo in 1982 and a second unsuccessful strike in 1995, which involved all the factory workers being replaced. The factory was originally built and run by a small company called New Brazil Candy Corp. The company no longer exists. not much information has ever existed about it, and now the Roottrees run it entirely. Okay. Is there anything in here that's searchable? The local politician might be relevant since he was the one that got bribed, or we're assuming was bribed by Guy Hudson. There's no proof that he was bribed. So Edson Soares was a politician. You can find a dissertation published by a college student as part of their PhD in history. It focuses on the rise of democracy in Brazil. Seems up to 1988, Brazil was run by the military, and the politics during that time were often a hotbed for corruption and nepotism. Edson was a former mayor of Valagos, Brazil. Before politics, he was a manager in an automotive factoring plant for a major American car company. He was put in charge of the city by the military government in 1973. As mayor, he used his manufacturing background and knowledge of American business to establish new factories, distribution plants, and other business ventures in the area. This had two side effects. Number one, he became rich. Two, many locals were forced to relocate. This did not make him a popular mayor, and what the paper speculates was a move to counteract this unpopularity. His wife, Sonia, was discreetly put in charge of a television station called Telerede. He often used his connections to ensure supporters would appear on local television spouting his beliefs and emphasizing his political victories. He remained in office until 1988, when he was defeated in the first election after the military government was no longer in control. Okay, let's see Sonia. There doesn't seem to be anything related to the name Sonia Soares anywhere online. However, Spider's search does return a page that lists a news anchor by name of Flavio Soares, who has a mom named Sonia. Okay. Flavio Soares is a young Brazilian newscaster with a bit of a cult following. The discourse around him, to put it in polite terms, lewd. There's a website, something called Fan Fiction, as a small section dedicated to him. Seasoned men, women, and some men of variety ages and writing skills find him worthy to include in their stories. You may skim through some of the tales and learn the common thread is that he's currently dating a supermodel named Ashley York. Some stories either seem to ignore her existence or quickly put her out of the picture. There's other more traditional fan sites that list things about him, including his age, his zodiac sign, his favorite food, and his mom's name, Sonia. There also seems that Fabio translates to golden hair. I feel like Ashley York is going to be important. I do want to look at the picture, though. Did I get a picture? Did I not get a picture? Oh, there we go. Alright, so this is Flavio. Seems like he's really popular. But Ashley York should also be popular. His girlfriend, if she's a supermodel, should be somewhere. Ashley York is a British supermodel who does ads for perfume, clothing, and jewelry. She's been the subject of some controversy in the past months, having been protested by PETA for wearing furs on the cover of some magazines. She's dating... Okay. Maybe we'll try Teen Blast and see if they come up. So Flavio Soares. Oh, nope. But it comes up for Ashley. She's a British model that was on the cover of Teen Blast wearing a fur shawl 3 months ago. This doesn't seem to be helpful, but another more recent text says she's dating Flavio Soares. In it, a Teen Blast reporter asked how they met. She was in Rio for Carnival, and he was on one of the parade floats. I had no idea who he was, but I liked what I saw, and I told people to invite him to a party I was going to. I felt stupid once I realized we were going to his party. Well, his mother's party. She runs an empire down there called Transmissapablo. Okay, so Transmissapablo is a massive media group owned and run by the mysterious woman named Sonia Alves. Seems like Sonia Alves is a common name in Brazil, so she shortened her name to Nia to stand out in the public's eye. According to the page that focuses on her company and vague, unsearchable details, Nia received a significant inheritance in 1980 and invested it in many different manufacturing businesses in her hometown of Brazil. At the same time, she just began to learn the ins and outs of running a television network. She continued to work in television until 1988, when Brazil began a period of transform. She felt this was the perfect opportunity to launch her own media company using her investments and connections. Now her company owns television networks, magazines, newspapers, and advertising firms. After doing some translating, it seems that she's listed as unmarried, does not go into any other relationship history, stays out of the spotlight. Oh, so she really is not involved. So Sonia Alves. And she's could be someone he had an affair with. And she's media. Right? Oh no, because she was married to somebody. This person doesn't have anybody on their marriage list. So she's not in that spot. Let's say she's over here. So we have Sonia. Because she was married to... Because she got divorced. So because she's listed as single now. But she was married to... I think his name was Edson Suarez. So that was the politician that got bribed to let them make the factory in the first place. I'm assuming that's him. And then her son is Flavio Suarez. So, and he's famous. He's an actor? No, he was a news anchor on their channel. There we go. That kind of helps. Okay, so we locked her in, locked them in. We locked in a couple spouses. Okay. We're missing someone, though. There's an affair in the middle that we don't have. And then this final affair. So are we saying that his son is with... That's the part that's always confusing. Is we saying that Guy Hudson birthed all these children? And that they're not the spouse's kids? I don't know. He traveled a lot, so we know that's probably relevant. Didn't we read this? Oh, this is another thing. This is the interview from Cicely Sanchez. She met him on New Year's Eve, 78. Guy liked to throw big parties. She was coming off of Changed Man. His wife learned who I was. She invited me to the party and cornered me to talk about a book. That was the first time anyone recognized me for my work. I had finally made it. The book they asked me to write sounded great, but none of the stuff that made him interesting was allowed to stay. At the core, Guy was not complicated. I could boil him down to two traits. First, he wanted to be seen as the second coming of the great Elias Roottrees, and secondly, he had never been satisfied living a life that needed to be seen that way. He had his fortune and looks, and he used that to exploit. He exploited that to pick up women, but he never let anyone know, so it cost him a lot to cover it up. That's the only interesting thing about Guy. He was James Bond trying to convince people he was Mr. Rogers, I guess. Maybe that's not the best metaphor, but Elias Roottree was boring as hell and all about family. Guy did everything he could to be seen that way. After I submitted my first draft, he sent me this garbage book, The Roottree Legacy, with Elias on the cover. The last time he and I met, he had even switched out his orange suits for the same green suits that Elias wore. And remember Fancy Flavors? Guy knew that part of Elias's legacy was the 5-piece flavor, so that's what Guy tried to do. Caviar was a disaster here, but it was actually somewhat popular in Brazil for whatever reason. In Christmas 1979, he went to Brazil to open the Brazil Roottree factory. Guy was always hopping around the world trying to create that success. It's complicated. I had an out in my contract. Surprisingly, Guy signed the contract with my lawyers, wrote without running it by anyone in his legal department. I could pull my name off the book at any time, but Guy still got the content. After I left, it got a lot harder to convince any publisher to give it their time. If I had to guess, his family very wisely put a stop to it. Mid-81, months after I'd already moved on, he called me back and showed me a final draft. Do you know how expensive it is to publish one copy of a book? It had my name on it in big, shiny, embossed letters. Like all the problems in his life, throwing money at me was his attempt to win me back. But it had half the page count and the narrative was torn to bits. No thanks. The dinner was good, imported steak that likely cost as much as a month of my mortgage, and we all got pretty drunk. He sent his mistress, Susie something, into the bathroom to proposition me. Poor girl. I remember her from our trips overseas. She was too good for him. Anyways, he died soon afterwards, and that was the last that came up. So he has a mistress named Susie something. I haven't read it. I just skimmed the sections on Guy to see what people were suddenly calling me up to ask about the man. I'd say she did well for what she had to work with. She only had rumors, whereas I spent time tailing him. Sometimes he knew, sometimes he didn't. He invited me to join them when dealing with Roottrees Brazil, but I actually had people on him when he went to... he went other places, Australia, France, and China too. When he met with someone, I figured out who they were and how they were involved. Doubtedly, so if the meeting happened when he didn't want me around. Despite his best efforts, I got the whole truth, including things even his family never knew. For example, the daughter of his business partner in Australia, I think her name was Robin, he and she definitely spent nights together he didn't want his family to know about. So there's a possible Robin and a possible Susie. Sam mentioned Guy's affairs and treats them like many people would logically think to treat them, like the infidelity was a problem for Patricia. When his wife first approached me, though, it wasn't to talk, if you get my meaning. On paper and in public, it was a marriage like any other, but in reality, it was more of a mutually beneficial agreement. They both got what they wanted out of it, the same thing. I'm assuming I have to spell it out so you can get it in writing for your readers. Women. Patricia enjoyed the company of women, and the swinger scene made that more accessible. I told her I wasn't interested in her and Guy. I later found out if I had said yes, her next question would have been whether or not her husband actually had to be there too. Guy, on the other hand, was seen in a traditional marriage, at the same time could bed any woman that found him charming. I assure you that's exactly the type of marriage he was interested in. So his wife was a lesbian. He had a possible Susie and a possible other person. Is there a Susie listed here? We have Susan Ford. So we have a Susan Ford, which may be Susie. Is there a Robin anywhere on here? She quit in 80. She was an interpreter. So they took trips together. Is there a Robin? Well, Guy left. Okay. But we're getting somewhere. But we see that he went multiple places. So he didn't just do Roottrees Brazil. He went to other countries to try to do the same thing. So Roottrees Everywhere. Roottrees Everywhere was an expansion in the late 70s. It coincided with some other large changes at the company and had mixed success. As far as you can tell, there are different companies related to it were all formed in very different and sometimes haphazard ways. There are minimal organized information about the history of the expansion itself, but you can glean the following. Roottrees candy had been distributed globally to make certain markets approved by Elias as early in the 1940s. This included places like Canada, Mexico, and select countries in Europe. Roottrees Everywhere involved Roottrees expansion to other major markets that were assessed to be ready for Roottrees. This started with 4 that had no share in it: Australia, Brazil, China, and France. Each of these countries had its entirely new company formed, mostly by making deals with local distributors and manufacturers. Okay. So Roottrees was one of the companies created to manufacture and distribute Roottrees candy, developed in summer of 97. Charles Martin, who owned the company that manufactured licorice in Australia, was tapped to run the factory after he impressed the American leadership. He did have some success, but only in certain regions. The manufacturing leg of the company shut down in 92 after the death of Martin. Okay. Most of the history was unrelated. 79, he helped develop Roottrees, used his own wealth to build a new factory and distribute the maple treats through the same methods he'd used for a previous candy venture. The website mentioned he had an unusual business agreement with the main Roottrees company, Much like how the Clancy Trust distributes the profits of the Roottrees Company evenly, the profits for Roottrees will be split 50-50 between the American Roottrees Company and Martin. This made Martin very wealthy, but also led to many cost-cutting measures in order to increase profits as much as possible, especially towards the end of his life in the early 90s. Roottrees Company gained a poor reputation in Australia and sales suffered. His fortune went to his daughter, Robin Martin, who sold both companies at first opportunity. Wonder why she would sell both. Robin Martin is featured in many of the top 100 wealthiest women in the world list. She owns a private island off the coast of Australia, where she reportedly has her own exclusive retreat. She has no husband, and there's widely circulated rumors somewhere in the 70s that she had a medical procedure to make sure she would never have children. You find the joke on a site called Edgy Jokes that implies she was quite promiscuous and has the punchline involving Robin's eggs. For what it's worth, Martin seemed to lean into the rumors. In the 80s, she showed up at a charity faction with 3 very attractive men, each wearing a shirt that simply said, "Satisfied Partner" on it. Interesting, I guess. So it sounds like she's the daughter. Maybe she isn't. Maybe we're off here. I don't think it's her. Because it doesn't sound like she had any interaction with Guy ever. And she stayed in Australia the entire time. So I don't know if that's as helpful as we thought. Let's try China Roottrees. China Roottrees is a company that created to manufacture and distribute Roottrees candy. They're based in summer of 79. Leng Hongbo was seen to personally win over the Roottrees family, was the owner of multiple textile factories that did not wish to import the ingredients, and built a special factory to manufacture the candy in China. So instead, they made a deal to import bulk unpackaged Roottrees candy and label it not only for China, but additional markets. He was already in his mid-50s when the deal took place. He only had daughters, and his brother, Leng Hongyu, took control upon his death in 86. After Hongyu died, it was passed to the oldest child from the next generation, Leng. I'm not even going to try to butcher her last name. Okay, let's look her up since she's the current owner. Leng, in China, the family name comes first, so Leng is her last name. Oh, okay. Is a businesswoman running the Leng Tai textile company. She's listed on the website written by and for women. The article entitled Empowered is about the recent rise of women entrepreneurs in China. The article states that due to her lack of brothers, she took over as CEO of her family company in 92 after her uncle was deemed unfit to run the company due to mental deterioration. This was apparently an extremely controversial move amongst the company's employees, and some of them quit and wrote a letter stating she must have coerced them in her vulnerable state. Since then, the company has performed well. Her nephew, who's currently her second in demand, is expected to take over when she retires. In the meantime, the board's stance has been a twist on a popular proverb. The article roughly translated as someone that has proven they could do something well could do it 100 times well. An unproven leader could doom us all. It mentions offhandedly that she is an early adopter of IVF and helped her sister have a child. There's an unsourced picture of her in the article. Where's the article? Okay. Now, she owned a textile company, so is that relevant? What was the name of the textile company? Okay, come across a website for textile company. It's a company that helped expand Roottrees products since the 70s. Company's very accomplished. They have quotes from different reporters and news articles in every language. Their page contains a very rudimentary leadership timeline with names that prove the company's gone back for some time. Goes back at least 250 years. During the period where it began the Roottrees, Leng Hongbo was the CEO. He died before the internet was widespread, so there's not much about him other than his name. He had a younger brother featured on the history section directly following him. That seems to be the only mention of this man. The current CEO is a woman. The site doesn't list her last name, though, although she does appear in the family tree below Hongbo. Leng Lang Tai has a few American logos on it. One is the Roottrees logo, another is Tranquillus, and the third is Peace of Asia. Okay, let's try Peace of Asia. Peace of Asia is an American arm of Lang Tai located in Pittsburgh. According to their site, the Tai in Lang Tai translate to peaceful, so I chose their name in American to match. There are a lot of companies listed here, too many to investigate, as a few of them seem to be relevant. Peace of Asia seems to be just as accomplished as Lang Tai. They offer fabrics and cloths at wholesale prices, but nothing out of the ordinary. Their business is said to be owned by husband and wife Jerry and Linda Han. Their Chinese names are listed too. And from using an online translation, that Jerry is Han Jui and Linda is Lang Jinao. Okay. Well, let's use our American names to see if we can find something. Jerry, Linda, and Mark Han appeared recently on a website called Focus on Philanthropy under the headline Hanging with the Hands. The hands were chosen because they donate significantly to causes that further Chinese American culture. Well, Jerry and Linda were both born in China and fell in love during college. Linda's father led a large company. I'm assuming this is the Pieces of America? I don't know. After they expanded to the U.S., Linda's father approved of the marriage so long as Jerry took over the U.S. portion of the business. Linda jokes that the entire situation is something out of an Alanis Morissette song. I was terrified to move to the United States when my big sister was desperately in love with the idea. She used to have this Butch Cassidy poster on her wall and was obsessed with Robert Redford. However, Jerry and I were the ones sent here, and now we couldn't possibly imagine going back. When we had Mark, we never even considered giving him a traditional name. Meanwhile, my sister stayed in China and thrived there. She doesn't even like visiting the U.S. anymore. Our kids are completely opposite, though. Mark couldn't wait to travel abroad as soon as he was old enough. He's actually in business school in China working with my sister. Our niece, who grew up there, is the opposite. She couldn't wait to get here. She started calling herself Lucy Lang in high school and flew out as soon as she graduated. The name change apparently drove my sister loco. Okay. Lucy Lang is not exactly a common name, but they're not the most uncommon you come across either. There's a few that come down. So we have a Lucy Lang mentioned on the robotics website as a part of Team Talon Claw. Team Talon Claw is one of only 2 teams from the U.S. participating in a new robot-based show in the U.K. Another Lucy Lang, a part of a small women's a cappella group in Los Angeles called the Gin and Tonics. And a third Lucy Lang in New York working for a business called Corporate Synergetic Solutions Unlimited. Well, she said she came over after high school, so she's probably not old enough to be working anywhere. So let's see the college thing. So Team Talon Claw is a robotics club of Mid-Eastern University. Their robot, also named Talon Claw, has been selected for appearance on the 2nd season of a British television show focused on robot fighting. The Robotics Club is a text-only site, but you find links from the university's student section. The site seems to have been used mostly to announce the schedule to its members. The club was supposed to meet every Tuesday and Thursday, but the last 8 dates have all been canceled because a few members of the team are currently in the UK filming. Another date from a few weeks back was canceled for an interview from the school newspaper. At the bottom, the traveling members of the Talon Claw are listed as Team Captain Jaya Patel and supporting members Lucy Lang and Kurt Hauser. Well, maybe there's a picture of her on her college site. So Mid-Eastern University is a notable private college that advertises itself as midway between Maine and Miami. Their mascot is the Spectres, although they're not known for their sports programs as much as their education. Their legal and language departments are their pride and joy, though they have a fairly extensive computer science and robotics program. Along with other prestigious schools that haven't quite reached the notoriety of an Ivy League school, sometimes referred to as Little Ivy, the college embraced this, calling their newspaper the Herald, which is a combination of both Herdera, a scientific name for Ivy, and Herald. The website boasts they have a historical technology museum on campus that still has a functioning computer from the 1960s that takes up a full room. They also have a printing press that they use to print one special edition of the Herald every year. Maybe she's in that. Oh my God! The every article takes me to another article. I cannot get the straight of it. Okay, so the Herald is the school newspaper at Mideastern University. It seems to be available as a periodical. Well, we haven't got a new one of those lately. All right, Lucy Lang, you better pop up, because if not, I'm not going to understand. Okay, the Herald has a story about their school's robotics team Talon-Claw. Lists 3 students and talks a bit about their history, including their interest in robotics. The only one that catches your attention is Lucy Lang. She grew up in China as Min Lang, but came to the U.S. specifically to attend university. She says she grew up around factory-scale machines that assembled products that would be shipped around the world, and the moving parts and automation fascinated her. However, as she progressed through her major, she became more obsessed with smaller, more powerful hydraulics, such as the mechanism that closes the Talon-Claw's weapon. In addition to robotics, she loves linguistics. One of her hobbies since coming to the United States has been collecting accents. In her spare time, she practices not only removing any trace of her native inflection, but also quickly switching between different regional accents. She feels her very best is the Southern Belle, but her favorite is the Valley Girl due to its use in popular culture. So this is Lucy Lang, aka Lang Min, with a Talon-Claw robot. Now, we haven't seen that name. Well, it's still her name, though. Now, going back to the map. If she's a child and her name is Lang Min, we're going to use her real name because you know how they feel about names here. They're very funny. They want the correct name, their current job. Like, it's got to be super accurate. And she's a student. So her mom has to be the woman that owned the factory. What was her name? I have to go back because now I lost it. She was from Roottrees, China. Let's see the history. Sorry. I think it's this one. She's the one that owns the textile company. So let's go back. And she never married. Right? According to the article, she was listed as single. So that would make sense that she has no partner here. Right? We have other pictures of guys. I don't know why we're pretending that we don't have other pictures of him. We have a lot of other pictures of him. Everyone else, well, we didn't fill that tree in, but everything else is pretty much filled in. On this, so we're going to go forward. So he had multiple affairs. We got the secretary. We got another secretary. When he did Roottrees, China, he slept with someone. And then when he did Roottrees, Brazil, he slept with someone. So it's like he has some people who were local and then some people when he did all his traveling. What was her occupation? Did I miss that? I think I missed that because she definitely had a job. I'm not losing my mind here. What was her job? Oh, she was the media mogul. She owned newspaper, radio, and all that. Because they're funny. You got to put all of it in. Okay, so his final affair would have been the late 80s. Possibly. So, let's go back. Oh, not that. So, the final affair would be 82 to 80. Well, no, because he was already dead. He died in 82. Okay, so the second to last page would be when he probably had his final affair because he passed away in 82 and Ernest Matson Jr. took over. So, it couldn't be after 81. Okay. So, we know that they mentioned a Robin Martin and a Susie something, which could have been Susan Ford, as a possible person. And a lot of other people have quit, so we're not getting a lot of people. Now, under expenses, he developed a bunch of new flavors. He had a bunch of parties, a bunch of new flavors, a bunch of parties. So he does the same parties every year. He does a New Year's, he does a 4th, and he does a Christmas. This is the only one that's weird, is the Grandorf Dove donation. Not sure what that is. So the Grandorf School for the Deaf, formerly Grandorf Dove, is located about an hour from where the Roottrees offices used to be in Butler County, but it serves much of the Pennsylvania and nearby Ohio. According to the website, it's formerly named Grandorf Dove because Grandorf was the last name of the founder and Dove is a Danish word for deaf. The founder had issues with the government translators, leading to an odd transcription issue. In 1990, it was renamed to better represent the school's purpose and to correct the embarrassing lack of effort and awareness demonstrated by the government officials in those days. The staff is listed on the website. You can scan through all of the biographies and see that the principal, Miss Ford, now that could be Susan Ford, right, is fluent in 5 languages, including ASL. She's been mentioned as working at the school for over 15 years. Her bio also mentions she's not deaf herself, but has learned sign language to communicate with the deaf. She mentions she's responsible for securing funding for the Hudson Wing, which is the donation we see Guy Hudson give her in 81. So there's something there. If we look up the Hudson Wing, it should tell us it's a donation from Guy Hudson. So the Hudson Wing was an expansion to Grandorf Dove, now Grandorf School for the Deaf, built in 82. So they donated it and took a year to build. It's a separate, much smaller building, half a block from the main campus, and operates as a smaller independent school, offering free ASL courses for family members, friends, and caretakers of deaf children. According to the website, they got their name after the president of the Roottrees company generously donated $250,000 towards the construction of the building. It's also a very vague history you can see to somewhat fill in the details from the other information you've seen about the school. It's mentioned that the donation came at the assistance of an employee of Roottrees at the time. Now, we know Susan Ford worked there at the time. So where is she? She was moved to office staff in 80. Then a year later, he donates $250,000 in 81, and the school was built in 82. So it's definitely on her insistence. It mentions she learned ASL from the main school before the Hudson Wing ever existed to surprise her husband, her future husband, who was deaf. After learning how useful a skill like this would be for non-deaf people who wish to serve those with hearing issues, she convinced Roottrees management to invest in the school. The Hudson Wing opened and she became the first teacher at the campus. At first, only operated on the weekends, but has since scheduled afternoon classes on some weekdays. Okay, since this is a local thing, too, let's see if there's any more information on Grandorf Dove. So it's a school for the deaf, listing a lot of articles. Butler County Time Archives shows like an endless list of snow cancellations, extracurriculars, and weekends events that began over 70 years ago and stretched almost until the 1990s. Among the avalanche of useless information, you will almost miraculously discover one useful article. Grandorf Dove was the center of a crime article in 82. It seemed that someone defaced the school and vehicles outside of the brand new Hudson Wing of the school. There was multiple broken windows, and one of the teacher's cars was painted with profanities and accusations of infidelity. A few weeks later, a follow-up article provides more details. There was one arrest, Thomas Hughes, who was coincidentally a former student at the school. Apparently, the destruction came weeks after he married the school's newest teacher, Mrs. Hughes. She was not a teacher when he went. He graduated a few years earlier. According to the reporter's investigation into the police reports, trials, and restraining orders, Mr. Hughes was convinced that he was not the father of Mrs. Hughes' current pregnancy. He was released on bail, and the school agreed not to press criminal charges after an agreement was made to pay for the damages and for the couple to begin the divorce proceedings. It seems Thomas Hughes, Mrs. Hughes, and the Hudson Wing have all avoided further appearances in the Butler Times. All right. Maybe we should look up Thomas Hughes. Oh, it gave me nothing. Okay. That's interesting. Maybe he's in here. No. Okay. Never mind. That wasn't helpful. We're going to go back. So, Grandeur School of the Deaf. Maybe we should search it by the actual title, because that's what it's called now. So, the Grandeur School for the Deaf, formerly Grandeur Dove, is located about an hour. Oh, no, we got the same thing we got before. Let's search that in the periodicals. There we go. So the school has made a few odd appearances here and there since 1990. Not too many. You can't look at all of them. And so scrolling through a few pages, you find something incredibly useful. Local students provide key evidence in scientific study. The article from March of this year mentions the Ford sisters, who attended public school in Butler County, are only one of a few identical twins in the world who suffer two different genetic issues. One has asthma, the other has a deadly allergy to peanuts. Their mother, a Mrs. Susie Ford, who's a principal at the nearby Grandeur School of the Deaf, was originally contacted by researchers looking to identify if there any set of twins where one was born deaf and one wasn't. While she didn't have any twins attending her school, she asked if her daughters, Melissa and Heather, could be useful, and it turns out they were. She said they couldn't be more different. My youngest, we all call her that even though it's only about 15 minutes, is shy and essentially has not stopped running from the moment she learned to scamper. Asthma has kept her sister off the soccer field, but she's the definition of an extrovert and is even performing in a local production of Is There Life After High School later this year. All right, we have two sisters, one with asthma and one with the peanut allergy. The Ford twins. Well, that's going to be easy. They're going to be here. So the principal... Do we have a picture of her? Maybe we don't. But I think Principal Susie Ford... Well, we don't know what her previous last name was before she got married. So Susan something was the previous... she worked as a secretary at one point, but then she didn't. But then they referred to another last name, Hughes. So Ford was probably the husband's last name. But I have no idea. Okay. We're missing something. So we're going to look up, Is There Life After High School? Is There Life After High School is a musical. It's quite obscure, only appearing on Broadway for 17 performances. Nowadays, it's performed by smaller theater troupes, including high school drama clubs. There's one song that has somewhat surpassed the popularity of the rest of the musical, called The Kid Inside. If you listen to it, I recommend Barry Manilow's version. If you've heard the song before, it's likely that cover. Let's look it up in the periodical, because this is giving me like a random information. It seems the high school in Butler County performed Is There Life After High School near the end of April 1999. Includes Heather Ford. Okay. All right. So we have Susan. I'm assuming her last name was still Ford. I mean, they didn't give us another last name to give her. Oh, last names are on this side. Susan... Where is it? Ford. Now, the reason why I assume that's her is because she would have been at the Christmas party to get the donation. Okay, we locked in these people. We locked in some extra pictures, which is nice. Oh, somebody at the door. We haven't seen anybody in forever. Not them being together.
It's us. So I just have to say, the work you're doing here is fantastic.
Thanks.
So fantastic, in fact.
There goes Clark. Always the bad cop. Go ahead.
Well, our law firm, Ruby Legal Enterprises, is having trouble keeping up. They're actually begging us to stop submitting new Roottrees. They said it's getting difficult to verify your progress.
They should just be doing a DNA test. All the lawyers should do is just get a DNA test for every single person that I name.
Well, consider that a good thing. I told Clark you'd get results.
She says that like I didn't believe her. Regardless, the bad news is it's going to take 5 potential tree additions before anyone
Man.
from now on.
Okay.
Good luck.
And keep up the good work.
I like how they're not even giving me new evidence at this point. I think her husband's last name is Hughes, but we need to figure out what his first name was. I don't know. I don't have an alternate picture. So one girl with the inhaler is probably the older one, and the younger one's the EpiPen. They're both students because they're in high school. I want to say Heather is the older one and the more outgoing one. So then the other one is Melissa. But it won't lock in until I have everything. Was his name Thomas Hughes? Okay. I don't have an alternate picture of her. Unless I'm missing something. But I don't think so. I've looked at every photo. Yeah, I've looked at every photo. So the only thing that's missing... I don't know. I think that's it for that tree. So the only thing I'm missing is I'm missing maybe one potential photo of Guy, but I don't think so. So the last part that hasn't been done is infidelity number 1, which is going to be the hardest one because this one is Elias and his, he was the founder in that whole thing. So it's going to take a minute to lock in those people. Probably, but I think we're pretty good on locking in the ones that I have so far. I just hate that there's another picture of her somewhere. And that I don't have the final picture. That's what's driving me a little bit nuts. How do I spell Hughes? Right, he was convinced that it wasn't her. He wasn't the father. I don't know. I can't think of anyone else to look up. I guess I won't worry about the alternate pictures. Because they're not super relevant here. Like, it would be nice to have the alternate pictures, but I don't have to. So I didn't get some alternate pictures even at the top. I didn't get all of them. Okay, so I think I'm going to end this video here because the last line at this point is the original infidelity from the 21, which is the dad. But I don't want to start that because I don't even know where to start, to be honest with you. So I'm going to wrap it up here. But what do you think of Roottreemania? It's actually pretty fun. It reminds me so much of the original story. And it's nice to see that they really thought it out all the way to present day, which I guess is 1999 at this point. Let me know in the comments below what you think.